Okay, Hare Krishna. So, on behalf of ISKCON Sydney, thank you to all the devotees joining. Today, we'll continue our Sukhadev Goswami prayers. Okay, we'll start off by singing Jai Radha Madhava for the pleasure of the Lordships. Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopikanallaka Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajanaranjana Jaya Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Jaya Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Yashmati Nandana Damodara Jaya Yashmati Nandana Damodara Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baldeva Jaya Subhadrama Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gurudev Jaya Gurudev जय श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ की जय यशोमती नंदन भगवान की जय श्रीपाद की जय समर्पित वृंद की जय नंद गोपनंदे हरि बोल ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भासेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna. So before we continue the beautiful prayers by Sukhadev Goswami to the Lord, we'll do Mangala Charan. So Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Zagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabhadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namasute Tapta Kantana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So for today's class, we'll be continuing on the prayers of Sukhadev Goswami. So today's class, we covered verses from Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.12 to 18. That's where Sukhadev Goswami was praying to the Lord to seek His mercy. He spoke about taking care of Bhakti Yoga, or unalloyed devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is actually the topmost duty, the easiest process, and the method to go back home, back to Godhead, to Krishna. And this process is actually recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for people like us in this fallen age of Kali Yuga. And Sukhadev Goswami, he glorified the Lord. He talked about the strength of this holy name of the Lord and confirmed how everything is actually dependent upon the Lord and nothing can be done without His will. And in this age of Kali, the lack of religious principles is more than compensated by the process of chanting the holy name. And it is said that in this age of Kali, is 3/4 devoid of religious principles. Hardly 1/4 of the principles of religion are still observed in this age. But by the mercy of Sri Krishna, the religious principles has been made so easy for us that simply by rendering transcendental loving service unto Lord Krishna, by chanting His holy names, one can actually achieve the highest result of religion, namely being transferred to the higher planets within the spiritual world, or even Golok Vrindavan. And also we need to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Krishna will always protect us, because He's Sattva-tampati, meaning He's the master of the pure devotees, the Vaishnavas. And today we'll continue from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, verse number 19. And so Sukhadev Goswami, he continues saying, Sayesha Atma Atmavatam Adishvaras Trayi Mayo Dharma Maya Stapo Maya Gata Vyalikir Ajasankaradivi Vitayo Lingo Bhagavan Prasitatam. So everyone here is actually searching for peace. So Anandamay Sat, pleasure seeking, which is actually the quality of our soul. But when the soul, it enters into this material body, it becomes dormant. And mind, it takes over our senses. And it seeks for peace as they're suffering from the body and the mind in this material world. And as living souls, all originally Krishna conscious living entities, but due to our association with this matter from time immemorial, consciousness is now adulterated by material atmosphere. But the jnani knows that the goal of life is beyond this material world, but he doesn't actually understand anything about the nature of this material world. And Srila Prabhupada, in this purport of this verse, he says that the mystic yogi practices different types of austerities for the attainment of material perfection. But the devotees of the Lord, they don't actually want anything like this for their self-satisfaction. That's because the devotees only act for the pure of the Lord, and they engage in the pure devotional service at the Lord's lotus feet. And Shri Krishna says, Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. He says, to those who are constantly devoted and worship him with love, Krishna will give the understanding by which we can go back to him. And the Vaishnavas, because they are always and constantly protected by the Supreme Lord, have even greater powers than that of those powerful yogis that we mentioned, who perform great austerities for many such years and still cannot achieve the basis of bhakti. There are actually two processes of creation, namely Sarga and Visarga. The primary creation is done by Lord Vishnu, and the secondary creation is done by Brahmaji. And Brahma performs austerity for the purpose of knowing the truth himself, as he was instructed by the Supreme Lord to do meditation. He heard the sound tapa. And the Hare Krishna Mahamantra that we all chant has different translations given to us, and one of them is as follows: Krishna, which we all know is all attractive. Hare is actually Radharani's mood in devotional service, bhakti. And Rama is the transcendental happiness which is the result of that devotional service. And these three words, namely Hara, Krishna and Rama, they're transcendental seeds of the Mahamantra, and the chanting is the spiritual call for the Lord and his energy, just to give us protection in this world, because we are all conditioned souls. Chanting is like a genuine cry of a child for his mother. So we're crying out for Krishna, please help us. Mother Hara helps the devotee achieve the Supreme Father's grace, and the Lord's mercy, he reveals himself to the devotee who chants this Mahamantra sincerely. In Bhagavad Gita, it says Krishna is seated within the heart as though neutral, but he is also not interfering with this material energy, but he's very eager. He's eager to see the living entities come back home, back to Godhead in his loka, to the original positions, and to resume the devotional service eternally. And a quality of the soul is that the soul is always active. It's constantly wanting to serve, and hence one should always be engaged in the active devotional service unto the lotus feet of their lordships. And it's important to take shelter of devotional service, and then only can we understand the purpose of creation, which Sukhadev Goswami is going to explain later. And Sukhadev Goswami, he further prays to the Lord for being the master of everything. He says, Shriya Yajnapatir Prajapatir Dhyam Patir Lokapatir Dharapatir Patir Gatis Chandaka Vrishni Sattvatam Prasitatame Bhagavan Satam Patir. And Sukhadev Goswami, he's explaining here, Krishna is the husband of the goddess of fortune. For this universe, sir, we have one Lakshmi Ji, the goddess of fortune, who is actually the expansion of Mahalakshmi. Says, Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Samrama Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. It says in Vrindavan, there are thousands of such Lakshmis that are worshipping Krishna with awe and reverence. And also Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha, which refers to that the gopis in Vrindavan, they're actually the Lakshmis who are serving Krishna. Another quality is Krishna is the enjoyer of Yajna. He's also known as Yagyapati. And he says in Bhagavad Gita 3.9, he says, Yajnartat karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartham karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. He says, work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, that such work causes bondage within this material world. And therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duty for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. And Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the purport of this verse, he says that those who are not freed from all the misconceptions perform sacrifices to please the minor demigods, like mentioned in all the Vedas. But the devotees of the Lord, they know that Sri Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of all performances of sacrifice. And therefore, they perform the Sankirtan Yagya and Bhakti, or devotional service to their lotus feet. It says, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhyatma Nivedanam. Prahlad Maharaj gave this to all of us as well. So Bhakti and Sankirtan Yagya that is prescribed to us are especially recommended in this age of Kali. The transcendental vibrations established by the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare is the most sublime method for reviving our transcendental consciousness, our eternal self. And Krishna, another quality that Sukhadev Goswami mentions, is that Krishna is the leader of mankind, or the created beings. And according to the Katha Upanishad, this one Lord, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the leader of the innumerable living entities created. And Krishna is also the Lord of intelligence. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, he says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matha smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarver ahameva vedyo Vedanta Krit Veda Videva Chaham. It says that Paramatma, Super Soul, the Lord, is living in everyone's heart. And from him only does one's power of remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness follow. And it also follows, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Mata Sarvam Pravartate. He is like the proprietor of all the planets. He's also the leader of this earth planet. An example that Srimad Bhagavatam gives is of Varahadev, who was saving Mother Earth, lower planetary systems. And another quality, Krishna has unlimited qualities, but another quality is that he is the Lord of everything and the ultimate destination of everything, even the Andhaka, the Vishnu of the Yadu dynasties, who were in spiritual mode of goodness. And just as a background to the Yadu dynasty members, who were actually the eternal associates of the Lord, knew that Lord Shri Krishna was everything to them. He was a supreme personality. And all of them, they wanted to return to Lord Krishna after he had finished his transcendental pastimes on earth. The Yadu dynasty was actually annihilated by the will of the Lord, because the members, they actually wanted to return back home, back to Godhead with the Lord, and Krishna also wanted that. And Krishna is the worshipable Lord of all the devotees. However, one point arises: without senses, without our mind, without our intelligence, we can't receive this transcendental knowledge mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. But to receive such spiritual knowledge, we need to gain that through a spiritual process. And Sukhadev Goswami further talks about remembering the Lord and the parampara system that has been passed down from the Supreme Lord Himself. He says, Yadangriya Vidyana Samadhi Dhautya Dhiyanu Pashyanti Tattvamatmana Vadanti Chaitat Kavayo Yatharucham Same Mukundo Bhagavan Prasitatam. He says that when a devotee follows in the footsteps of the higher authorities, they can see the Lord. But if they try it on their own whims, they have no access to see the Lord. It's going to be impossible. Mahajano yena gata supatha. It means that the only way to know the truth is that we must be humble and submissive. Also, in all phases of life, one actually has to perform devotional duties under the guidance and the direction of the spiritual master. And we must follow in the footsteps of the higher acharyas to attain perfection in bhakti yoga, devotional service. And in Bhagavad Gita 4.34, Krishna states, says, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadyakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. He says, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. He has understood Krishna. Even when the Lord advented in this material world as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he accepted this process of the Guru Parampara just to set an example or like a precedence for us to follow. And Krishna also mentions, he says, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschashmi tattvata tato mam tattvato nyatva vishate tad antaram. It is only by bhakti that we can know the Supreme Godhead. Even if we are cleansed in the mind though, or be freed from the gross and subtle material desires, in that state, yes, we can be extremely learned, but we cannot understand the Supreme Lord Himself. It is only through bhakti, through our humility, that actually attracts the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then the Lord then reveals Himself to His devotees. And by Krishna's mercy alone can one be removed from all the attractions of this material world, and we can be finally free from the clutches of Maya. Only sincerely and submissively accepting the conclusions of the authorized acharyas and living by them though. A devotee always considers himself as helpless, the most fallen, and to such a humble soul, Krishna daily becomes attracted. An example is of when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was traveling. He was giving everyone, without any discrimination, the opportunity to chant the name of the Supreme Lord, hence demonstrating to the living entities that the power of the Lord is magnanimous. Everyone that came in contact with Mahaprabhu and by his love were completely enchanted by the holy name and also started to chant. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he distributed Lord Krishna's love to this entire world. And that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur also sings. He says, Bhaja Bhakta Vatsala Shri Gaura Hari Shri Gaura Hari Sohi Goshta Bihari Nanda Yashomati Chitta Hari. He says that just worship Shri Gaura Hari, who is always affectionate towards his devotees. Krishna, he becomes a servant of his devotees because Krishna is Bhakta Vatsal or Bhavgrahi Janardana, meaning the one who looks after his devotees. Because right now it is Damodar month, right? And we listen to the Damodar Leela, or the pastime of Krishna in this month. The significance of those two fingers we know. First one, it is actually the determination of that devotee. Second one, it's mercy of the Lord. And this mercy of the Lord, it won't come unless we accept the loving devotional service to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And Mother Yashoda was the epitome of parental loving affection of the Vatsalya. Another example is of the gopis in Vrindavan who were in Madhurya Bhava. Also the cowherd boys who were relating to Krishna in the Sakhya Bhava. And Akruji, he was worshipping Krishna in the Dasya Bhava. So we can exchange our loving devotional service with the Supreme Lord in these rasas like Madhurya Ras, Vatsalya Ras, Sakhya Ras, Dasya Ras and Shanta Ras. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyava Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bija. He says, in this material world, the living being goes through the cycle of repeated birth and death. As Shankaracharya, he says, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani Jatare Shayanam. He says, so we are taking birth after, but when we come in contact with the pure devotee, the pure vow of the Lord, by the mercy of Krishna, then we engage in bhakti, the pure form of devotional service. Another sweet pastime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is of when he went to South India. In one temple, he saw he was sitting in the corner of the temple at the back end. He was reading Bhagavad Gita, but there was something wrong. The other Brahmanas were just looking at him and they were laughing. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that this Brahmana was reading the Bhagavad Gita upside down and he was reading it without the correct pronunciation, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being so kind, he went to him and said, my dear Brahmana, you're reading this book, the Bhagavatam, upside down. And then the Brahmana paid obeisances to the Lord. He said, oh my Lord, I am very illiterate. I can't even read. But my spiritual master, he told me to read Bhagavad Gita every day. So I'm just following his instructions. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that it is very good. But while reading Bhagavad Gita, why are you crying? Then the Brahmana said, take a look at this picture. So he was showing the front cover of Bhagavad Gita. He said, take a look at this picture. The Supreme Lord of the universe is a chariot driver of his devotee. And he's acting like a servant of his devotee. And that's why, looking at the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I'm crying. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced the Brahmana and said, you actually have the gist, or the pure understanding of what Bhagavad Gita is actually trying to say. You have devotional service to Krishna. And you are following the instructions of your spiritual master wholeheartedly. In this age of Kali Yuga, those who actually have good intelligence, they know the supreme sacrifice of all sacrifices is to humbly call out for Lord Krishna's name. And Krishna says, in Bhagavad Gita 6.47, he says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatin atmana shraddhavan bhajite yo mam same yukta tamo mata. He says, the path of bhakti is actually so powerful, it's pure, that even yogis who go to the Himalayas and undertake penances, strict penances and strict celibacy for the whole entire life, still cannot obtain or attain the Lord's mercy. They cannot see the Lord. Even if a person who sincerely attentively and regularly chants the holy name of the Supreme Lord, in this attitude of proper service, this person will advance more spiritually and come closer to Krishna in this very life compared to that of those yogis. And chanting the Lord's name is the supreme auspicious sacrifice of this age. It says, Nama Sankirtane Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam Pranamo Dukkha Samanas Tam Namami Harim Param. It says, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord, Hari. The congregational chanting of whose holy names destroys all sinful reactions, and the offering of obeisances unto whom relieves all material sufferings. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advises to us, the people in this fallen age, in his Shikshashtakam, he says, Trinadapi sunichena, tarorapi sahishnuna, amani namana dehena, kirtaniya sadahari. He says, one who is striving to be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than the tree, ready to offer all respect to others and expect nothing in return except service. Such a person can chant the name of the Lord constantly, and that should be and is the attitude of the pure Vaishnava, the pure devotee of the Lord. And Sukhadev Goswami, then he talks about when Krishna first imparted the spiritual knowledge to Brahmaji. He says, Prachoditaye napura saraswati vitan vitajasya satim smritim hridye swalakshana pradurbudkhila suyata same rishinam rishabha prasitatam. He says, Krishna is Sarva Karanam. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. And Krishna, who first imparted this Vedic spiritual knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. It says, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaya. Being bewildered by Ahankara Vimudatma, we, as a fallen souls, once again, we think that we are the doer. Kartaham iti manyate. We think that we're the doer, and hence become further bound by the bondage of material nature. But we need to understand that everything is done by the Lord, either by his direct or indirect energy. And Krishna, he controls this world by his indirect material energy. In this material world, like we know, there are three modes of nature. And the living entities, they have been endowed with the freedom to act. And these actions, they either take place in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. And when we do these karmic actions, that produces reactions as well. And therefore, at the beginning of spiritual life, the devotee, he must understand the arrangement and the influence of karma. One must act for the pleasure of the Lord. Otherwise, one becomes subject and bound by the karmic laws. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 3.27, Prakrite kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. He says, the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of these three modes of nature, thinks himself to be the doer of the activities which are actually carried out by nature. And therefore, one must understand that everything is happening because of karma. We're not the doers. It's not us that are making things happen. It's Krishna. If a person does not acquire knowledge from the bona fide spiritual master, that knowledge should be considered useless or nishphala mata. And therefore, spiritual Vedic knowledge it must come from authorized personalities, from the disciplic succession, those who know Krishna in truth and spiritual knowledge beyond our sense perception. It is adokshaja. We can't even see it. And spiritual master, they can impart, they can reveal this transcendental spiritual knowledge within the heart. Okay, and like we mentioned earlier, it says Brahma Ridhaya Adikavaya Muhyanti Yat Surya. So the Vedic knowledge that was given to Brahmaji within his, the Lord's speech are vibrations of that transcendental sound, the tapa word that Brahmaji heard. So there are actually two different types of sound vibrations. The first one being prakrita. So it's actually the sound vibrations that our physicist hears in this material world. The second one being the aprakrita sound, the spiritual sound vibrations that descend in the chain of this disciplic succession from Brahmaji to Narad Muni to Vyasadev. And this sound, it cannot actually be translated by the mundane scholars or scientists that we have now, nor can it reveal the true importance to the Vedic mantras. Sukhadev Goswami continues invoking the pleasure of the personality of Godhead so that he can get the power to speak the truth and give the hearers also the power to listen to the truth. He says, Bhuter Mahapir Yaimauro Vipur Nirmaya Shete Yadamosha Purusham Bhunte Gunansho Dashusho Dashatmakang Solang Krisishtan Bhagan Vacham Sime. He says, the Lord is himself the father of the Vedanta knowledge. And it is he who knows the factual purpose of the Vedanta philosophy, and therefore who actually wants to represent the truth, who wants to speak about Krishna, can only do so humble and being like an instrument of the Lord. Otherwise, on the other hand, if one, due to egoistic attachment, speaks of his own ideas or his own perception, his own opinion in the name of the truth, we should consider and understand that such a person is simply an instrument empowered by the illusory energy, Maya, actually contaminating the truth that was given to us, which is spiritual. Sukhadev Goswami is exemplifying the true teacher of the Bhagavad Dharma, and when being questioned about this confidential topic of creation by Parikshit Maharaj, and he begins by praying first of all to the Lord and saying, please let me be an instrument of your mercy, and you please speak through me, and let me simply repeat what I've heard from my spiritual master. And Sukhadev Goswami's spiritual master was Srila Vyasadeva. The foundation of material existence is false ego. And when we no longer have this false ego, then we don't have material bondage. We don't have the material desires which always trap us here. The false ego is actually created from intelligence. It's created from the mind and from the following, the 6 principal creative elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and also the 7 sense organs. These are all created with the basis of being as the false ego. However, the spirit soul, which is actually pure, which does not have false ego, it enters into this material nature. And because of its own will, it allowed the false ego to cover its true, eternal, pure, and humble nature. We suffer because we have false ego. We're surrounded by it. And Sukhadev Goswami, he very simply explains the definition of what false ego is. He says, false ego means that a person, he thinks that they are God of. And he thinks that he's the enjoyer, he's the doer, because of him activities arise. we need to understand that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and the eternal service, and this then cleanses the false ego from our soul, and gradually we will make progress in the spiritual advancement in Bhakti Yoga. And that is the message that Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita are all trying to portray to us. And the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, it is simply meant to make us as the pure souls remember who we actually are, what we actually supposed to do, what is our relationship with our Lord, who we are. Sukhadev Goswami is praying to Krishna that those who hear this message within their hearts and help them understand what he actually is speaking about, and which is to make us understand the truth and who we are. And Krishna gives us, he says, Mata smriti jnanam apohanam cho. So he gives us all of this, and so that is why within our heart he will give us the power to understand the message, if not now, later. In this verse, Sri Sukhadev Goswami, he also provides us the reasons as to why Krishna is worthy of being glorified. And the reasons as Krishna is worthy of such glorifications is, 1, Krishna is Shodashatmaka. He is the creator of the 16 material elements that we mentioned earlier, which are meant for the enjoyment of these living entities here. Secondly, Krishna is Bhunte Gunan. Krishna helps the living entities to enjoy in this material creation, because without his will and his mercy, the living entities are unable to take activities, simple activities such as breathing, seeing, hearing, tasting, talking, and even eating. He's actually the source of power and energy behind the gross and subtle sense organs. Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita 9.10, he says, Maya dakshina prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetu nanena konteya jagad viparivartate. So this material nature is one of his energies, is working under his direction. And intelligent people, they understand we are actually dependent upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his mercy. Otherwise, we cannot actually do anything. And one of his names, one of Krishna's names is Anata, which is the refuge of all the fallen souls. The word fallen is used here because we have forgotten our eternal relationship with the Lord, and hence why we are fallen. Like Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita 18:66, he says, Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam raja aham tvam sarva papepyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. He says, abandon all the varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So what are we waiting for? We should surrender to Krishna. It's as simple as that, and leave everything else into his hands, lotus hands, and have full faith in him. He will take care of us. He will protect us. Srila Sukhadev Goswami, being a self-realized soul who knew perfectly well that he cannot speak about Krishna at all, and unless Krishna, he bestows his causeless mercy upon him. So Sukhadev Goswami prays, he says, Solang Krisishta Bhagavan Vachamsi me. He says, O Lord, be pleased to decorate my speech so that us as the hearers can understand the truth. And that's why the significance of these prayers are. It is to show us the nature of the pure devotees and how they seek the permission of the Lord, because unless the Lord, as Rishikesha, induces the speaker, they won't be able to speak and the hearers won't be able to understand. And Sukhadev Goswami, he concludes his prayers to the Lord by paying obeisances to his spiritual master, who is Srila Vyasadeva. He was also the Shakya Vesha incarnation of Vasudeva, Shri Krishna, who compiled these scriptures. He says, Namastasmai Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vedase Papurnyanam Ayam Somya Yan Mukham Buruhasavam. So just as a brief background to who Vyasadeva actually was. He was the son of Parashar Muni and Satyavati. He was born on an island and his name was Krishna Dvaipayana Ved Vyas or Vyasadeva. So Krishna being dark because Vyasadeva had a dark complexion, and Dvaipayana, which means that he was born on an island known as like the Dvipa, which is an island. So in Sanskrit, Vyas, it means someone who divides something. And so this refers to Vyasadeva's primary task within this material world, which was actually to divide up the Vedas and to categorize them, to spread them within humanity, this material world. He's generally referred to by his reverential title as Ved Vyasadev. And he's also one of our principal acharyas from the Brahma Sampradaya because his spiritual master was Narad Muni. And Narad Muni's spiritual master was Brahmadev. And his was Krishna. And this is all called Parampara. And following is a verse why he compiled such literatures, and it's given in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.21. It says, Tata Shaptadashe Jata means Vyasadeva was the 17th incarnation of Godhead. Satyavatyam Parasharat, it means he appeared in the womb of Satyavati through Parashar Muni. Chakre Vedo Tarashakha, it says he divided one Veda into several branches. Dushwa Pumsa Alpa Medasa. So Alpa Medasa, it means he divided one Veda into 4 Vedas. For us, the people who have less intelligence in this fallen age. And although after compiling these great literatures, Vyasadeva, he was not feeling satisfied in his heart. He was not feeling right. He's like, something is missing. Narad Muni, his spiritual master, he came along and said, those words that do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of this entire universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. So be in trance, and by my mercy, in your trance, in your meditation, you will see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His pastimes, and be surrendered and take help from Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. And Bhakti Yoga, like we know, it means surrendering to the Lord. And when Vyasadeva thus surrendered, he saw Krishna's pastimes in trance from birth all the way through to the sweet pastimes at Dwarka. And he especially saw the sweet pastimes in Golok Vrindavan and Vrajdham. And therefore Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also called Samadhi Darshan, which means that which Vyasadeva saw in his trance. And furthermore, at the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam, verse 12.13.18, it once again displays the glories and the benefits of hearing and chanting the verses from this glorious Srimad Bhagavatam. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is Amala, Puranam Amalam, is the spotless Purana, and it is Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam, is the most dear to the Vaishnavas, because it describes Yasmin Paramahamsam Ekam Amalam, Jnanam Param Kiyate, meaning the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramahamsas. So this Bhagavatam is Naishkarmyam Avashkritam. It reveals the means for being becoming free from all material work throughout the process of Jnana Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam, so transcendental knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. Thus, anyone who are vicharana paro, who seriously tries to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, who properly hears and chants Shinvatupathan with devotion, bhakta, and becomes completely liberated. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3 mentions Nigama kalpataror kalitam phalam Sukha mukhadamrita drava samyutam Pibhata bhagavatam rasam alayan Muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. So, Nigam kalpataror galitam phalam means to actually relish Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the mature fruit of the desire tree of the Vedic literatures. Shukha mukhad amrita drava samyutam. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukhadev Goswami. Later it says, therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although it was nectar, it was the nectarine juice, and it was already relishable for all, including the liberated souls. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10.7.1, Sukhadev Goswami is telling Maharaj Parikshit the importance of actually chanting and hearing about Krishna Katha. He says, when you hear Krishna Katha, you'll get 4 benefits. First one being, it is very pleasing for the mind and our ears. Second one, all material desires, they will be vanished. Third one, you will develop devotional service to the Supreme Lord, and our attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead will increase. Fourth, friendship with devotees will give us the attraction for Krishna consciousness. And with this last point, there is another nice analogy given of the raindrop, which comes from the skies. If it is caught within our hands, it is pure enough for drinking. But if that same drop falls in the gutter, its value drops so much so that it can't be for washing our feet. If it falls on hot surfaces, it perishes. And if it falls on the lotus leaf, it shines like a pearl. And finally, if it falls on an oyster, it will become a pearl. The drop is the same, but its existence and its worth depend on with whom it actually associates with. So if we have Jana Sangha, or associate with people who are not actually interested in Krishna consciousness, it will actually be another cause of another impediment called prajalpa, or unnecessary talking, which we should avoid, otherwise our devotional service will fall down in that path. And Srila Narottam Das Thakur has therefore advised us to live only in the association of Krishna conscious devotees, Bhakta Sanivasa, or Havsa. So the association of us is really important, and we have to associate with the like-minded devotees. And so that's when the topic of discussion always will be of Harikatha. And that's why Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 10.9, he says, Machita madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamancha. So Machita, he says, my devotee's mind fully engaged in me, and madgata prana, the lives are fully devoted in my loving devotional service. Bodhayanta parasparam, they're always preaching my glories amongst themselves and the entire world. And kathayantascha mam nityam, they're always speaking of my pastimes, my name, my form, my qualities. And by this, they are tushyanti cha ramanti cha. They derive great satisfaction and great bliss. And the original Vyasadev divided one Veda into 4 Vedas, like we just heard, and to allow us to understand the essence of the Vedas. But our Vyasadev, Srila Prabhupada, between 1968 to 1977, he translated Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, many more, and he published 147 books into English, so that not just us, but the whole world can read and understand the message that Krishna is trying to portray to us in their own languages, so it's easier for them. He also traveled around the world 14 times, and he established 108 temples around the world. And so we should be grateful to Prabhupada as well. He was truly blessed and empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And just concluding, just as a summary of these prayers, Srila Sukhadev Goswami into the subject matter of the process of creation. Before beginning his actual explanation of the creation, which was questioned by Parikshit Maharaj, he first begins sincerely this series of beautiful verses in prayer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. It's because Sukhadev Goswami, he understood that he is the eternal servant of the Lord, and that all knowledge is actually originating from Krishna himself. In fact, he also mentioned in his prayers that everything that exists is utterly dependent on the mercy of the Lord. So Hare Krishna, we'll conclude these prayers here by Sukhadev Goswami to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And please forgive me for any mistakes. And thank you everyone once again for joining. Hare Krishna. Kanta Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shubha Prabhat ki jai. Hare Krishna.